So today, inshallah, we're continuing what we did last week, inshallah, and we began discussing that there's a very well-known book known as the 5 Love Languages, and we covered 3 of them last week. Today, inshallah, I want to cover the next 3. You're saying, 3 and 3 is 6. Yes. So even though there are 5 love languages, but I've added one more to add the Islamic component to this concept. So first of all, we covered last week. Anyone remember what we covered last week? I know it's been 1 week. Usually we forget about what the Imam read that same day in Salat. I understand that. So one is gift. Quality time, very good. And words of affirmation, mashallah. So there's words of affirmation. Number 2 is quality time. Number 3 was giving gifts. Today, inshallah, the next 3 are acts of service. Now, let me explain what that basically means. It means to help each other in their life. Let me explain this. The reason why I'm going to explain this is because today we have a very serious problem when it comes to our families. And I would say that especially when it comes to the younger families, you see this problem more and more common. And that is that, yes, there are ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where it is mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, he would come inside the house and he will help out around the house. He would sometimes, if his sandals would break, he would knit his own sandals. He would fix his own sandals. He would go and he would milk the animals whenever he wanted to and so forth. But the point is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was a man that while he has certain obligations as a prophet to propagate the deen, to answer people's questions, and to serve as a community leader, he also helped out around the house. Now that does not necessarily mean that, because often you're going to have some people who are going to go to one extreme and say that the husband should go inside the house and they should help in all the affairs of the house. And there's going to be one other extreme who's going to say that the husband should not help at all and just come take care of your responsibilities outside and go home and do nothing and let the wife take care of everything. Our deen has always taught us a balance. What that basically means is that, yes, I have no problem saying this, that the man has the primary responsibility to go outside to earn an income to spend on the family. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. This is his obligation. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning this about the man. Allah did not mention this about the woman. Her primary responsibility is not to go and earn an income. Yes, if she has a career, she wants to pursue a career, that's a different case. But her primary responsibility is not to earn an income. And that also means that that her primary responsibility is to stay at home and take care of the domestic responsibilities, take care of the children, providing a tarbiyah is their one of the most important responsibilities of a woman. Today, this feminist mentality is teaching us that the woman is not dignified. The only way she will earn dignity and respect, and the only way she will have a high regard is if she leaves the house and she goes outside the house. Once again, the typical way, the universal way that it has always been worked is the man goes outside the house, the woman primarily stays at home. And if she has to go, then I will say this also, because we have to set the record clear. And while some are scared of saying these kind of things, I have no problem saying these kind of things. If a woman goes outside also and she earns, then if her domestic responsibilities are lacking, then she has to use her money to overcome that. Let me make that very clear. Let me give you an example. If a woman is going outside, and she is earning for herself, while, for example, the house is left unclean, If the house is unclean, now, let me take a step back and first also say this. I'm talking about in a situation where the man is earning enough that it will take care of all the responsibilities of the house. Like everyone will be taken care of. Alhamdulillah, things will go easy in a situation like that I'm talking about. If there's a case where the husband is not making enough, that the wife has to work, then things are going to change a little. You understand? What I'm talking about right now is the case where the man, alhamdulillah, he has a good enough job that she is not required to work to take care of their financial responsibilities, or to take care of their, to take care of everything that they need. I'm talking about that kind of situation. So, once again, in that situation, if the woman chooses to go outside and work, then in that case, if she needs to clean up the house and she cannot, and she brings a maid, in that case, the husband does not pay for the money, she pays for that money. You understand? This is how it works. So, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. Generally, in any family situation, there are roles and responsibilities of the husband, there's roles and responsibilities of the wife. And time to time, when we talk about acts of service, if the wife is in a situation where she could be in any kind of difficult kind of situation, then in that case, the husband should step in and support and help his wife if she's in a situation or she's in a jam. For example, you know that your wife is going to the doctors, for example. She has a doctor's appointment. And you know that she's going to get out and she's going to be in a time crunch to go and pick up the children. As a husband, you can step in and help out there. You understand? This is what it means, acts of service. It doesn't necessarily mean, it does also mean that you can go home and help around the house. But the reason why I'm talking about this also is because today, in most families, especially the younger families, they are literally keeping a score. Okay? They are literally keeping scores. This is how many times I clean the house. This is how many times you clean the house. This is how many times I vacuum. This is how many times you're vacuum. It doesn't work like this. You understand? It does not work like this. Women have the primary responsibility to take care of the domestic responsibilities. Once in a while, a husband steps in and helps out. It's a different case. You understand? So this is what that means. It also means that even when it comes to the responsibilities of the husband, if he's in a jam, the wife should step in time to time and help out with his. For example, if the dry clean needs to be picked up, she understands that my husband is running late, he was stuck at work, some meeting took place a little longer, then in that case, step in, try to help him out. You understand? And it doesn't have to be, this is another issue that we have today in our families, is that we feel that I should not tell you what I need, you should understand it and do it on your own. Why do I have to tell you that I need some help? This is wrong. If there is some help that you need, why should you feel it so formal that you need to ask your spouse that, can you help me out? This formality does not exist within the family. You understand? Between a man and his wife, there should be no kind of formality that you should understand what I want. If a husband needs help, he should ask his wife. And if a wife needs help, she should ask her husband. Formalities are for other people. Formalities are not necessarily between a husband and wife. So helping each other out in certain areas of life, this is what brings a husband and wife together. The next thing that's also very important, the fifth love language, is physical touch. Now, when we talk about physical touch, often people think the major type of physical touch. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the minor type of physical touch. What that basically means is that if we want, and of course, the majority of our families are in a struggle, the majority of our families are breaking apart because the primary reason, one of the key primary reasons I've seen is that major physical type of touch does not exist. And often it happens that when kids, they come into the world and so forth, that begins to take a back seat. It's very important that we are there for each other. But before that, first comes the minor physical touch. What does that mean? It means that, for example, that doing small gestures where there is some kind of physical touch is very important. For example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned that while Aisha radiallahu anha would go through her monthly cycles, at that time Rasulullah he would put his head on the lap of Aisha radiallahu anha. That type of physical touch is what I'm talking about. Or we learned also from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is actually found in Jami' al-Tirmidhi, where one time a group of people came inside Masjid al-Nabawi, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's masjid, and they were performing some kind of act. It was not a worship, it was not a religious act, it was some kind of cultural act. That time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was standing, he was observing, and Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, because she was in stature, or like in terms of her physical, or in terms of her physique, she was shorter than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what she did was that she stood on something, and she put her chin on the shoulder of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so just sort of like leaning on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with one hand she's leaning, the chin is on the other shoulder of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she's observing. That kind of physical touch is also mentioned in the hadith. Why? Because that physical touch is also important. Or we also find that whenever any wife of the Prophet ﷺ would cry for any reason, they can become emotional, they can feel hurt about anything. One time, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Safiya radiallahu anha, she began crying. Why? Because while they were traveling, her camel was the slowest amongst everyone. So she felt hurt about that. So she began to cry a little. Now, often what happens is that we look at, imagine in our situation, we would look around and tell our wife, grow up. That's the first thing we'll say. Grow up. Come on, grow up. It's not a big deal. Grow up. That's what we say. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not do that. He came to the Safiya radiallahu anha, and he basically wiped her tears off. You understand? That physical touch is what that is meant over here. That is very, very important. If the minor physical touch does not exist in a marriage, the major one is going to take a major backseat. You understand? The minor leads to the major. Likewise, we also find that sometimes when the wife of the Prophet would want to get onto the animal, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would come, and sometimes he would offer his knee as a step stool. So he would stand there with his knee like this. They would step on his feet, and they would get on the animal. So even this in itself is documented in the hadith. Why? Because it's a lesson for you and I, that even when it comes to our spouse, these kind of physical things, these physical minor type of touches is very important. Kissing her on the forehead one time, here and there, is something very important. And subhanAllah, when it comes to the kids, I have to say this. Once again, there's always going to be two extremes. One extreme is the culture that many of us we come from. We don't show any type of love and affection to our spouse. Not at all. Because we feel that it's very, very taboo. It's haram, it's not right at all, and so forth. And often we say, bacche kya kahenge, what the kids are going to say, and so forth. So we have to understand that once again, our culture may say that even the slightest amount of showing affection is wrong, but our hadith teaches us, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ teaches us that concept is wrong to begin with. You understand? Because the Prophet ﷺ did the same thing with his own spouses. At the same time, we have to also understand that there are levels of haya. And we have to apply haya in our life. So it is important that a husband and wife, they show that what are the Islamic limitations. Yes, of course, there's a certain relationship that exists between a husband and wife. But when it comes in front of the children, there's only a certain limit that we should do. You understand? There are some families, and subhanAllah, I've sat down with some youth before, and sometimes what they tell me about their own parents, they go out they go very beyond in front of the children. And of course, once again, we don't go to that extreme. We keep everything in limitations. You understand what I'm trying to say, okay? But the point is that this kind of physical touch, these small minor touches is very, very important. The last thing, which pretty much I've added here, is the spiritual component, okay? The spiritual component. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his wives, he would always push his wives to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will always remind his family to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the time of tahajjud, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would come to Aisha radiallahu anha and, just take some water and just do like this. He would just throw some water on her face, okay? Not a bucket, okay? Just, a little. And then if Aisha radiallahu anha would wake up, she would wake up. If she did not wake up, the Prophet would not scold her afterwards. I came to you, I woke you up, you don't have any respect, you did not wake up, and so forth. No, if she would wake up, she would wake up. If she could not wake up, she could not wake up. But nonetheless, the Prophet ﷺ, he would always push his family. And subhanAllah, this is something that we learn from all of our anbiya. In fact, if you study Ibrahim alayhi salam's story, and especially when we go for Hajj, when we go for Umrah, what are we doing? We are reviving the legacy of not only Ibrahim alayhi salam, but the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. See, when a husband and wife and a family, they work with each other and coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is very beloved and very dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because as an individual, you can do all your ibadah yourself. But to take your entire family, to push your entire family together, because often what happens in many families is that sometimes the wife will become, they will excel in religion, very much. And they will begin to study and take halaqas and so forth. And what happens is that she looks behind to her entire family, her husband, her kids. And what she's doing is she's excelling and they're being left behind. And then she feels something that I'm superior, they're nothing and so forth. And the opposite also happens too, that sometimes the husband excels in his religion so much so that the family, the wife and the kids get left behind, and he has this, this superiority kind of complexity to himself that I'm better than them and they are inferior and they're no good and so forth. But once again, what we learn from the Prophet ﷺ is that yes, one may be excelling than the other, but that also means that coming back to your family and pushing your entire family closer to Allah and to His Prophet ﷺ, this spiritual component is probably the most important component in any marriage. Because if our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is strong, our relationship or a relationship between a husband and wife will also be strong. But if that relationship is severed, then this relationship will also be severed. So that is why in any marriage, the key focus should be is pushing each other to earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. Ramadan is coming, push each other, compete with each other. Okay? Compete with your spouse. How many times she's going to finish the Quran or how many times he's going to finish the Quran? Compete with each other. This is something very important. Also, you can, wake each other for qiyam. Especially last 10 nights, some people like to come to the masjid, some people like to stay at home. It's fine. But if you stay at home, for example, wake each other up, push each other to pray more and more qiyam. If you're coming to the masjid, push each other to stand for the entire qiyam and so forth. So these are things. The spiritual component is another love language that if we can apply in our life, inshallah, it will make tremendous amount of improvements in our life. So these are just 6 that I want to share, inshallah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who apply these kind of things in our life. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Wa jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين